Hi there, and welcome back to part 3 of Programming and Coding Basics with VBA, Python, and Java with JavaScript, brought to you by QuadRoot R&D. Now in part 1, we covered the very overview of programming and coding, the difference between the two, and in part 2, we went into the basic building blocks of programming, where we covered input and output statements, arrays, operations, control flow or conditional statements like loops and branches, and functions. And these are basically the building blocks of programming. Now in part 3, we are just going to put all of that together and do a simple hands-on exercise with a pseudo AI example that I've thought up of. But before that, we need to know how to get started with actually programming. And for that, we need to know and understand what is an IDE, or an integrated development environment. And this is basically the environment where you will be coding. And I'll point you to where you need to go to install your programming languages and IDEs before we get started in the next class with the exercise. So what is an IDE? It's basically a glorified text editor. You can program in Notepad, but it would be a bit difficult because you wouldn't know where you're going wrong in terms of syntax. Whereas in an IDE, the different colors will let you know, okay, I just made a mistake, I need to correct that. And if you didn't notice with the colors, then, or the formatting, then you can debug straight away and find out any syntax errors. So it's basically a glorified text editor and a compiler and an output viewer for developing code. So it automatically senses keywords and changes font style, making it easy to read, detect syntax errors. Autocomplete options, making it faster and easier to code. Now, depends, not all IDEs have this. And then finally, it compiles or creates local hosts in case of web apps, and outputs a log in the console for testing and debugging your code. So all of this put together, an editor, compiler, and output viewer is the IDE, or the integrated development environment, where you have an all-in-one software that helps you code and test at the same time. Now the most common free source code editor is Notepad++, which supports several languages with some compiler abilities. However, it lacks output view or debugging, so it's not an IDE. It's just a source code editor, essentially. However, it's very useful, and I use it for my Python programming. Now for VBA, the VB editor comes inbuilt in MS Office, and Excel has it once you right-click the sheet and click on View Code. IDLE is the default Python IDE. That's when you install it. Or you could download other IDEs like Spider, Atom, and Jupyter. Now Jupyter is very useful for data science applications because you can see the plots immediately. So I use Jupyter when I'm using Python for data analysis. But if I'm writing a simple program, then I would just use Notepad++. Now for Java, Apache NetBeans is one option, or Eclipse. And these IDEs can be used for Java, JavaScript, HTML5, CSS, PHP, and those are more for web applications. I personally use Apache NetBeans, although Eclipse is used by a lot of companies. NetBeans is a bit easier to use. Once you know NetBeans, you can easily adapt to Eclipse. Then you have Visual Studio for web languages like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, PHP, C#.NET, VB.NET, etc. But this is an expensive software. It's not free. And for Android applications, you have Android Studio, which you can program your backend with Java or Kotlin, and even C++, and your front end is XML. Android Studio is free. Now some honorable mentions are Xcode for Macs, Aptano Studio 3 for web, and VS Code, which is a JS editor. Now VS Code is the free version of Visual Studio, but it's only a JS editor. Now to get you started with downloading and installing, for VBA, if you have MS Excel, you can just right click on any sheet and click on View Code, and in the top left box, right click anywhere and insert module. For example, in any spreadsheet, you can right click on the sheet name, click on View Code, and that will bring up the VB editor. In this box, you can insert module, and you can write your code here. Now you don't have to insert a module. You can write the program directly in any of the sheets, but then that program will be specific or private to those sheets. Whereas if you insert a module, then the program will be available to all the sheets. Now for Python, I use Notepad++, and you can download that from notepad++.org/download. You can Google Notepad++. And for actually running the program, you need the latest Python 3.x or higher release. 2.7 is obsolete unless you're dealing with an older 2.x code. And you can find this at python.org downloads. For Java, the IDE I use is Apache NetBeans, and you can get this at netbeans.apache.org/download/index.html. And then for running and developing Java code, you need the Java Development Kit, or the JDK, which includes the Java runtime environment, which is basically needed to run the program. And you can download the JDK at oracle.com/java/technologies/Java SE, which is standard edition -downloads.html. Now, once you download the JDK open source zip archive file for Windows 64-bit, you'll need to unzip this to C:, and then in the run command, type in env, and then when you see system environment, edit the system environment variables, click on that. Click on the system variables in the bottom of half. Click on new, and then you need to enter the variable name and the variable value. And in the variable name, put in Java_home in all caps. And in the variable value, you need to put in the location where you've unzipped your JDK. And if it's JDK 14.0.2, then it's the same. It could be JDK 16 by the time you use it, or JDK 20. So depending on the folder, the path that you've installed the JDK, you need to put that in this variable value. And then in the path, you need to click on edit, and then new, and then put in %Java_home in all caps, %\bin. And then that's how your system will recognize the Java JDK. And you can check whether it's installed and it's linked to your system using in CMD in the command prompt, and you can type in Java -version and Java C -version, and you will see the latest version. Now just to quickly show you what I mean by this, so if you go to the search, into the run, and you type in env, and you should get the edit system environment variables, and you can click on environment variables, and you can click on new, and this is the system environment. You click on new, and then you enter the java.home here, and the path where the JDK is installed. And under path, you can click on edit and new, and then you enter this bit here, which I've already done. And in CMD, just to check my command prompt, if I type in Java version, I can see that I've got 14.0.2 installed. Now that completes 3 hours, so that's all you need to know about programming, at least to get started with it. And in the next video, we're just going to go through an example that already covers everything that we've already done. But just to drive in the point once again, I have thought of this simple pseudo AI example called Life Decisions, which is just a fun program to tell you what to do based on your circumstances. However, it's been 3 hours, but there's a lot that you don't know about programming. Now, we've not covered object-oriented programming, and that would require another hour to go through. Then there's, if you're interested in writing web applications, making web pages, then you need to study HTML, CSS, JavaScript in more detail, jQuery, and that would take another 3 hours. If you're interested in making mobile applications, then you would need to study XML, Java for Android apps in Android Studio, or Swift for Apple apps, and that would require another 3 hours. Then you would want to know more complex input-output interaction with events, user interfaces, database queries like SQL, and that would require another 2 hours. If you're interested in data science and statistics, then we have a course for statistics and data science modules like Anaconda library packages for Python, including NumPy, Pandas, Matplotlib, etc., and that would be around 4 hours. And if you're interested in machine learning algorithms for data analytics and associated libraries like scikit-learn and TensorFlow, that would be another 4 hours. And if you're really interested in complex data structures, algorithms, data grouping and aggregation, which is used for efficient data processing, and this is advanced programming, that would require at least another 4 hours. So we have all these videos coming up, so be sure that you subscribe and hit the notification bell. Don't forget to like this video, comment, and I'll see you in the next video where we will be going through the pseudo AI exercise called Life Decisions.